Remote Indian villages that don't even have electricity or running water are using GPS technology to fight for their land ownership rights. This is a story about the tribal people of Sagai village, located in the national forests of Gujarat.
Tribals are not part of the mainstream society. They've been living in the hills, within the forests, for centuries.
For hundreds of years, Great Britain ruled all of India, and any forests were considered property of the government, regardless of whoever was living there. India gained independence from the British in 1947, but the forest lands were simply taken over by the new government.
Their situation was very bad because they didn't have any legal means of livelihood. Whatever they did to eke out that livelihood, it was considered as criminal. They were considered as thieves in their own land.
Local villagers, desperate to eke out a living, began to farm the land illegally, growing food for their families.
Since they had no legal rights, forest department officials would try to evict them and sometimes use that as an extortion mechanism that, unless you pay, we are going to send the bulldozer or send the tractor to uproot your crops.
Villagers were fearful to improve their land. It was too risky to dig wells or use a tractor. If a forest official was abusive or demanded a bribe, they had nowhere to turn.
By early 2000, the lives of the tribal population in most of India were similar to the poorest of the poor in India.
We came to a couple of villages and we saw their plight. Their situation was just like near starvation. They couldn't get 2 square meals a day. It was not a good situation.
In 1991, as economic reforms were erupting across the country, tribal communities and their advocates began to organize and speak out about property rights, laying claim to the lands on which they were living. In 2006, the national government passed the Forest Rights Act, creating a provision for tribal peoples to gain legal rights to their traditional lands. Ramabhai and his family live in Sagai village in the national forests of Gujarat. Rama is a farmer and a tribal leader in his village.
Gradually, everyone heard the news of the new law which was introduced that land prior to 2005 may be allotted by law.
But there was a catch. In order to gain ownership of their land, villagers had to prove that they were farming a specific piece of land prior to December 31st, 2005.
In situations like these villages, there is no one who's recording who's farming when and how. How would you prove that?
Everyone made a map of their land. We used thread to mark boundaries and measure an area to make the maps.
But the hand-drawn maps weren't enough. The government insisted on an official paper trail with a history of government-issued documents proving ownership.
When I applied, our application was declined and we were not given the title to our land. Almost everyone was refused.
After a long review, the government only approved 10% of the applications. It looked like most villagers were back where they started. But then they came up with a new idea. What if they could use Google Earth satellite maps to prove that the villagers were farming specific plots of land prior to 2006?
So the satellite images on Google Earth was one instrument by which we thought it's possible. So what happened was that archival images became available. So in some places we have images from 2002 and 2004, which means that you get a picture of the history. So if in 2005 you see this forest, you know this was a forest. If it was an open field, you can see that on the image. So if you see that boundary, there is no way you can deny that this plot was being farmed. And there was no other way to show it in such a dramatic manner as the satellite images.
અડધો એકર જેટલું 30 ગુંઠા જેટલું છે.